Yo! Alright, so last week we did single sword and sword and board from Keep 2025. So I want to look over Florentine and Open today. I'm not going to do great. Great's not something that I specialize in, nor enjoy, nor like watching or discussing. But I want to just make sure that I'm looking at like what is the state of the art of like two sword and great weapons in different tournaments. So I'm gonna just roll with those two. I don't think that this will take quite as long as the last stream. The last one was like 4 hours. I feel like I'm still tired from doing that, but it's Keep. It's a special occasion, so I want to make sure that I do an analysis on all of it. All right, let's get started. I'll ban you, dude. Don't even start. Kidding. Maybe. Alright, so this is... So we got Unknown. Do we remember who this person is? Drop the name in the chat if you've got it. The final round is 10 minutes. Okay, well... You know, I was like thinking about going to the store and getting a Red Bull because my energy's like definitely sagging today. I might like DoorDash some caffeine or something if this is going to be 30 minutes. Final round is 10 minutes. Okay. Well, we'll get there when we come to it. All right, let's get started. It's a great shot. Yes, lots of different stances here. Okay. I cannot tell whose win that was. But this is a good situation to just go for a reset. Okay, I mean, that could have been a simul. I really can't tell. I think Unknown was up one, and this isn't final, so it was probably a simul if they're resetting. Okay. It's 1-1. Quick shoot high. It's too far forward. That's good. Okay, go back. Okay, let's talk about what I'm seeing here. So we have a lot of really great stuff by Unknown. So I am a huge fan of any horizontal guard in Florentine. This is a really good way of you can use the lower half of the sword. So this blocks one lane, and then you even get a little bit of defense on the other lane when you use a horizontal guard here. And Unknown uses that pretty continuously throughout. So I'm not totally sure, like, there's sometimes when you see this sword in front horizontally, and there's sometimes when you see this sword in front horizontally, and there are like different applications for both. There's like no right or wrong answer, but a lot of the time you're trying to like get a certain interaction when you're putting one sword forward or the other. But I like to have a consistent one sword is horizontal, one sword is vertical, and you always have like a kind of a plan for these, a plan for like which sword is going to interface with which one. So that was consistent throughout. The other thing that I saw that I like is I don't know if it's this shot specifically. There's a lot of Unknown does a lot of really good cross blocks where when he extends with like a hard drive with one sword. He throws the other sword over his shoulder to protect it. Right there was a great example. So let's go back and see that again. He's got this guard. Let's see if we can get... That's not the right shortcut. Go back, go back, go back. Right there. So this is fantastic stuff. It guards this shoulder over here. So I like that a lot. I think a lot of the time I like to keep my sword a little bit further up because I feel like it blocks the whole arm back here. This here feels like something that you would do to like protect a shoulder from a kill shot or something in single sword. But I like to keep this other sword kind of inside, not inside, close, but kind of deeper out to make sure that it kind of still stays in play. And it's also a little bit more offensively threatening when it's closer to. But I think that this is like, it takes a lot of flexibility and a lot of coordination, in my opinion, to get this hand up over the shoulder here. So I think that that's great. I would probably want to keep it more like up here at an angle. So it's like blocking off the access to the whole arm and a little bit high, but this is great stuff. I think that was just one error that can happen pretty frequently with Florentine is I know that Florentine is very it's kind of the classic style that people talk about, like reads and setups and things like that, where you're waiting to see where you're throwing and then trying to predict like where your opponent's going to throw back so you can catch it with a block. But I think this wrap shot here was like, I think this landed because Onion waited just a tiny bit too long to see what the reaction was, right? Like he came in with like a lunge, popped, and then kind of waited on the inside to see what he would do. And I think one of the issues with doing that in Florentine specifically is like you don't have the defensive coverage where like a shield basically like cheats for you, right? Like if I have a shield on my hand, I feel very confident that I could watch and wait and kind of react to what people do. Even when they're like at a pretty high level, I'm not too afraid to be close to them. With Florentine, like I'm super fucking scared to stand that close to anybody for any reasonable length of time, right? Because I have less defensive leeway. I have less defensive leeway where I can read an attack coming in. And they also have a second sword, so they're able to make me look at one sword and strike me with the other sword, so they can use my kind of reaction against me if I'm kind of watching for that too closely, right? So it's kind of easier to get faked and pulled out of position. And I think with this arm that we lost here was kind of just like, we were just like a little bit too close, a little bit too static. So the way that like a setup works, where you throw a shot and expect them to throw back at you and catch the block and throw, that's something that you don't wait for that for more than like the minimum amount of time that it would take them to throw back. And if you don't get that throw back, you need to jump out or you need to just attack again. But you kind of don't wait to see what happens there because it's just super easy to lose like arms to stuff. So I was hoping for an outside response faster because I noticed they could only use one arm at a time from... I think what you mean is they could only use one arm at a time from our first fight. I think that that's true. I think that the risk for that is probably still too high. I think what I would do with your parameters to not lose that arm is like, that's a great assumption. I would try to get in, throw a shot that you think will draw an outside shot, and then kind of get out if they don't throw that shot, but don't like wait for it, right? You're certainly fast enough to see if they're going to throw it back or not, but I would kind of poke at them from outside range, like hop in, hit him, hop back out. If you don't get the throw, hop in, hit him, hop back out. And what that can do is that can build some pressure that will guarantee, or not guarantee, but entice him to throw back at you to the location that you want. So like waiting builds that temptation for him to throw another outside shot like that for sure, but it's an unsafe way to pressure him is to wait inside their range, in my opinion. But going in and out and pressuring him that way is safer, and I think arguably feels more pressuring than waiting for them to come up close, right? It's just my thoughts. I mean, I think that you were doing a great job in this fight. So that's just kind of the only change that I would make there so far. I think it looked like you threw to reset here instead of kill him, which is like perfect in my opinion. I think trying to too hard to get like a win out of a bad scenario is not a great strategy when you're down a sword, especially in Florentine where you like can't protect yourself from two swords at once, right? So throwing the reset's fine there. It's the smart thing to do. Plus it's easier than killing him. So I like your hand position here. Good horizontal guard. I also like, I don't know if that was readily apparent, but it's really important to switch which sword you have in front. And Unknown does that here, right? So he's got left sword in front, and I feel like this guard, you can use him however you want, but this guard here, when you have this right sword in front, this does a good job of like using blade beats and just closing them off from being able to swing at you because this sword is in the way. And then you see right here, he comes in with that guard and then switches to the other one immediately, right? So now this sword is forward, and this is more of like a, I don't want to say like offensive, but this is definitely threatening. Like, I'm going to hit you with this sword. Pay attention to this sword. And you had good defensive coverage there. I think maybe one thing to play with is a little bit more left-handed shots, especially when you have your right-hand sword in front. So now he's looking at this sword, right? I might think about like trying to stutter with this one and strike with the other hand potentially if you can. It looks like you're kind of trying to isolate this hand of his, which I think is like the correct thing to do and probably is the safest. But just an idea for an optimization there. I like that guard. I like this guard a lot because like this top quadrant here is closed off and the arm is protected too. So if he wanted to hit you, he's going to have to dive in real deep and get past two different swords. So I like this one. You got good control there. I think that would have been a good situation where if he's only throwing with his right hand, they say to not cross with Florentine, but I think you had such good control of his right hand with your left hand, with his left hand with your right hand, that you could do like a shallow cross counter with your left hand to his right. And that way it's like if you just kind of drop over like that to kind of hit the upper part of his forearm here, that still keeps your offhand in a very good defensive position and also threatens like don't attack. So that's good. I really love that you mixed up which sword was forward. It's something that I want to think about as like I feel like in my own fighting, I don't frequently like use that very creatively to threaten different things. But it's something I want to meditate a little bit more deeply on because I like that switch. That switch communicated a lot of stuff, and I bet it was like really confusing. The left hand cross guard. So I think one improvement that I can see here that's like an easy one to make is you dominated this fight, but you dominated with just your right hand. So the good news is when you add that left hand in, it's going to be super destructive. But I noticed on this fight right here, it looks like you're stuttering a little bit with your left hand to try to draw him out of position. I think it's arguable that like your left hand hasn't really come into play yet. right? So I think that this may have been, it looked like it scared him off. It made him switch back to your right hand. So maybe you were going to attack with your left hand, and he got scared of that left hand and switched back to the other side. So it doesn't make sense to use your right hand here. But I wonder if maybe it would have been wise to try to get more left-handed action in there at first, and then bring out the stronger right hand later. So these are just like nitpicks and like just thought process stuff, I think, down the line for advancing your Florentine. But this looked really strong, especially with your offhand positioning. It was peak stuff. I personally try to focus on the front hand as a priority. I think that that's smart. I think that it's smart for your fighting style in a lot of ways, because if you stay back far away from them, you're really only going to get access to their front hand anyway if you're kind of like maintaining that range, because it's not very wise to get close. What I try to do that I saw that I think could be a little bit more helpful is if you move offline a little bit more, and what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a momentary 2-on-1 where you have like two swords against their one sword by using your lateral movement. I don't know if you were maybe getting more tired towards the end of the day, but you were a lot more static than I felt like you were in single sword and sword and board. For some reason, I feel like the footwork doesn't translate for people quite as naturally into Florentine. I think because they're worried that there's two swords and it's really confusing. But I feel like your lateral movement would be even more powerful in this scenario. So you want to make sure that you are still using that tool there, right? It's a super strong tool for you. Maybe we'll see it in more fights, and you were just very confident that you could take this person's left hand on, and they were only giving you like certain shots, so it makes sense to conserve your energy too. Let's see if we got anything for... I think the main thing for the Justicar is it looked like he just wanted to fight with his lead hand. That's some crossbody stuff there with his right. It's like not really maintaining the range very well, not really moving the feet around. Kind of letting Unknown decide like what range that he wants to fight at. It is a small ring, so it can make sense to do that. I'm trying to see. I feel like the Justicar's got kind of like very, very vertical swords, which we talked about. Like for guarding those high quadrants, you usually want like some kind of a horizontal guard with at least one sword to kind of stop vertical chops from coming in. I think that's the main thing. Kudos to Morpheus for cutting out the shoelace tying. Okay. Alright, I think that's what I've got for that one. Let's look at... This is Toby. And I can't... Is this Big Head back here? Did you... Or Morpheus? I think that's Morpheus, actually. Okay. I just couldn't tell. Yeah, TD Morpheus. Alright, let's go back. Is that like a cross counter there? I didn't see what the call was here. Yeah, I can't tell. It looked like it might have been a simul. I think maybe Morpheus threw into the body and I think it looked like Toby may have gotten that other arm. Looks like Toby blocked. Got more from the upper arm. Gotcha. Okay. It's kind of a moment where they were ducking behind. Also, I forgot. Let me put the video in the chat. Even more handsome Morpheus. That's a clever ruse, because if one of the Morpheuses gets upset that you think that the other is more handsome, you can keep continually telling the other one that they are the more handsome Morpheus, and then just keep stacking it on, and everybody just comes away with a winner with that bit. That makes sense. Alright, Toby taking his time for the reset. Look, they got maybe a... Okay, I think that was Morpheus. So what's this again? I'm really struggling to see what the outcome was here. I think that was Toby calling that he had gotten killed. It looked like he threw like an initial stab and then kind of like tried to chop him up. And I think maybe Morpheus got in there. Okay, I think it looked like Morpheus kind of reached in for a shot, and Toby got that shoulder chop there. Yeah, that's what I thought too. Okay, so I think, let's go back to the beginning. All right, so the main thing that I'm seeing here is this is a very right-hand dominant fighting. There's no, I think, it says throat. There's not a lot of, like I said before, I'm a big fan of having like a horizontal sword in Florentine to try to establish some control over over, I don't want to say 2 lanes, but over like 1.5, since the tip kind of counts there. I think that would be a good addition for, it looks like Toby is kind of keeping his sword home to protect himself, which makes sense when he's in a range disparity. But I think if Morpheus had one of his swords forward, you can kind of extend that sword where you have like your main hand and then you have your lead hand. And your lead hand can kind of sweep their swords and knock them around a little bit to try to elicit a reaction. So I think that may be a thing that's a little bit more helpful. Because this, I think, felt like this fight, it looked like we were kind of waiting around on the outside for someone to commit to emotion and then kind of just trying to end it right there by jumping in and hitting a bunch of times. I kind of recommend against that because it's confusing for the Reeves, and you're essentially very much trusting your opponent to take their shots. And I don't have a problem with either of these guys taking their shots, but I feel like it's not a thing that I would default to in a tournament, right? Like, I try to default to a thing of, like, I have to hit them very clearly and make sure that I never get hit so I don't, like, accidentally get a bad call or something like that. So, like, the kind of drive in and flurry is like I feel like that's like level 1 Florentine. I want to see like level 2 Florentine where we're trying to get a momentary 2-on-1 with one of their hands with 2 of our swords by using like our lateral movement and using like one extended sword to try to do some stuttering, some feinting, establish some control by knocking their swords offline, just like something, right? It looked like there was kind of some very far away and kind of juking and play on the outside. But I think like Morpheus at the very least could be a little bit more interactive with his swords using his reach. by like knocking his swords offline with some blade beats, extending it, like jamming the lane a little bit. I think we just kind of had like a missed stab here, and then we went straight to the body. It looked like for most of these fights, like both of these guys were kind of trying to drive forward to hit them in the lower quadrants, like the hips and the stomach and stuff like that, right? It didn't seem to be a lot of attempts to like engage with shots to the arm with like counter striking or block striking or anything like that on the outside. So like Florentine is a game where you have to be really careful on your approach to not like overcommit to getting too close. That looked like just a great, a really well-timed slot. But I feel like there's it's basically like different ranges that you can engage with, right? And for Florentine, the range that I usually want to engage with first is try to like get their forearm so that I'm staying back away from them and safe, and try to pick them apart slowly by making them commit like an error with their defense, right? Because like it's really hard to make someone make defensive errors with shields, right? Because it blocks off like a whole plane that they have to like wrap around. With Florentine, it's like not the case. You can make them make small defensive errors where their hand is just slightly out of position, or they're just ever so slightly not lined up on the center line. You have to think about when we talked about combat geometry, and one of the concepts that we talk about is to have a block to begin with. Your hand has to be on the outside edge of the cone of attack, right? So if you step offline slightly, even if I don't change my hand's position in space, it's not on the outside edge of that cone anymore. So now you have zero defense because the person moved offline like 2 inches. So that's something that I would play with a little bit more. It looked like Toby was trying to get Morpheus to make range control errors or timing errors, and I feel like that's like the level 2 mix-up where you're fighting someone where you're like, I know that I can get close to them, but I don't think that Toby and Morpheus know each other well enough for Toby to be able to make that assumption, right? So I think what I would want to see is like more long-range sniping, more lateral movement to try to get a hand open. Something, a form of offense that is like safer and more conservative. I think we saw a lot of chops to the arm in Unknown's fight. I would want to see something a little bit more like that, personally. So for context, we just had the finals for single, like 4 minutes before this. Okay, that's helpful. A lot of the comments that I make on the fights are basically like they're ignorant of that context, right? So if I give anybody some feedback, like, well, that wouldn't have worked because I knew this about this specific opponent, like, that's valid. You had more information than I did. You were there. This is my focus here is just like technical stuff, optimizations, talking about the interactions and fights, and mostly stealing people's moves for myself. I stole the Unknown's shot and kind of converted it for Sword and Shield, which means I invented that shot and traveled back in time and taught it to Unknown, because that's how that works. Just a little bit of Chrono Trigger action for you there. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So context is helpful. If something I offer that you guys is ignorance of that context and therefore unhelpful, like, just disregard it. That's fine. I won't take that personally. This is for fun. So, all right, Magnus versus Big Head. Okay. I like the movement of the swords a lot to like keep anybody from getting too particularly comfortable. Like, even if you're just making them think like, why is he moving his swords like that? That's still a lot of thoughts that aren't about, I'm going to hit you with these fucking things, right? Okay, got it. There's like a simultaneous exchange of arms there. I like the communication there. That was good. Lefty on lefty. Oh. Oh. That was very unexpected. I was expecting like a shot to the inside forearm or something like that. Nobody expects the giant spinning leg sweep. I like that a lot. Glad I invented that move to steal at fighter practice. Actually, I'm probably not going to tempt fate with spinning. I get injured easily enough, and I'm probably not long enough to make that work, but that was really cool. Okay. So I like the extended guard here that Big Head is using, where he's essentially like, let's see if I can get, he's essentially like pointing his sword straight forward to say like, if you rush in, I'm going to stab you. And I think it works well with Magnus's stance, where both of his swords are very vertical, which I think makes it harder to block stabs. Because to block a stab, most of the time you have to turn your sword at least to like a 45-degree angle and sweep down across. So I think that's definitely a smart move to threaten that you're going to stab them with those forward stance. So I catch the block on his hip wrap too. One of my finest moments. Yeah, that's pretty sick, man. I dig that. Looks like Magnus kind of snuck in like a low quadrant shot there. I'm interested in seeing how that happened. I think we got a couple of pumps, kind of like to the high forearm side. And he had like he brought his right hand up and then chopped. So I think what I like about that is there was a bunch of left-handed pumps there. To a higher quadrant, and then Magnus raised his right hand towards the quadrant that he had sensitized with his left, and then threw lower, basically to like a lower quadrant. So I think that that's a really intelligent kind of compound faking situation, where not only did he make you look at the incorrect quadrant for that with one hand, but then he made you look at the incorrect hand too. So there was like an interesting series of like levels to that. I think that's definitely something for me to reflect on for my Florentine practice. Well, I'm very much like I feel like when I fight Florentine, I'm mostly like setups, positioning, snipes, and counter strikes, and not too many feints. But when I do feint, it's usually with the same hand that I'm gonna throw at, and the mix-up is just like I'm gonna pump at the wrong quadrant and then hit the other quadrant. But I like that he had a mix-up of layers of faking there too. So I think that I got caught up with what I was doing, lost track of the range, and went from thinking that I was safe to being dead. Magnus also did a great job getting me locked up, like you were saying. That's the breaks, man. You have high-level fights. Sometimes you get some high-level losses there. I think that was just a very, very smart approach on his part. Oh man, it looks like you got a very shallow hit there, and Magnus took it. That was good honor on his part. Maybe it wasn't too shallow, but you got like a good rising trap. Let's see here. How did you set that at? Kind of high sword interplay. Yeah, so that was good stuff. So you had a lot of high sword interplay with your right hand to kind of get him thinking high and get him thinking right. And then he threw, it doesn't look like it ended low, but it was an attack that started low and kind of swept up with the left hand. So that's another example of like a good layered approach to faking someone out in Florentine. That was great stuff. Great stuff and good call. Alright, I think I remember. Okay, this is just a card, and I think this was Starling, right? This is 353. Just a card for Starling. Okay. Alright. It looked like just a card called leg, and Starling, I think, was killed on that one. Okay. I guess that was a shot. I thought that was falling down. I was surprised. Let me see. The double sword slap on the ground. Okay, I think he got arm on that one. All right. Good lateral here. Good call there. Wait, what? It's that. I think maybe I don't understand what happened there. Maybe they're loud enough. It might. No, there's no captioning for this. She must have hit him on the second one in the arm. Okay. I think okay, getting the theme. We had like some good lateral there. It looks like Justicar kind of got like a low sweep in there. So I think, let's see, go back. The main thing that I'm seeing here, and there's like similar items for both people, both participant in the fight. Well, we've got like some very vertical swords for the most part, and we've also got offhands that aren't really creating a lot of extra defense for our right hands. Not our offhand or whatever sword that we're not swinging with is not creating like a defensive situation for the sword that's striking. So that's not always like the offhand or whatever. I'm just saying that to mean like if your one sword is swinging, the other sword needs to be a pal and kind of stay home and guard that sword. So it kind of seems like we're fighting single sword twice here, where we're not really using the combination in a way that's like greater than the sum of its parts, right? So it's just like double single sword where you don't know which sword is coming, but we're not getting like the whole Florentine situation where you've got like one hand is faking and the other hand is striking, or one hand is staying home and protecting the other hand while it's extending, like that kind of Florentine stuff. So I think the main things there are like when a person pels, you should kind of practice when you pel, reflexively putting your offhand in a protective position. It doesn't matter which one. You can say like, oh, okay, I want to, if I'm peeling, I could say something like, I want to practice covering my forearm. So when you throw with one hand towards the pell, you create offhand coverage with this hand. You can alternate back and forth like that. Or you can say, all right, if I'm fighting up from a little bit closer, I know that the shots to the offside on the body are a little bit more likely. So you could pell where you throw, and then this hand is up guarding this side, like this quadrant, right? Throwing that way. You could say like, okay, maybe they're going to go for my hip, so you can kind of cross down here with one hand and throw past it to try to block for the hit, like that kind of stuff, right? And you want to practice like back and forth, alternating to make sure that you've always got both swords in on the action in some form, whether that's offensive or defensive. But this feels like we've kind of both got like two Pokemon in our party, and we're switching out left hand Mon and right hand Mon. But we want something that's a little bit more like a group tactical thing. I think we turned on the lateral movement really well. in later fights, so that was good. I felt like the first couple were like a tiny bit static, which is fine. Sometimes you got to kind of find your groove to feel comfortable moving around. Let's see. That was like a good juke. There were like some body feints and stuff on Starling's side, but I think we could have used more. It was a lot of. It seemed like Starling's approach was to use a lot of straight shots that were perhaps powered by like some offline movement. Nothing wrong with that, but I think we need another layer of like misdirection here with some stutters or feints to get the sword out of position and not just rely on our feet to do all of the work for us. We got lots of tools and we need to use all of them, right? I think like for our Justicar friend, the critique is similar. It seems like they're fighting in a pretty similar way, but or maybe like a little bit stronger, a little bit faster for the most part. I did see like a nice offensive flurry, like a chain of attacks from the right hand. I think it was. Let me see if I can find it. It was like 30 seconds ago. I think it's right there. So it's like some left hand work. So that would have been a perfect time when we had like a 1, 2, 3 with the right hand to throw with the left hand, or 1, 2, 3 and get them to be like, okay, he's got to throw with his left hand, and then pump with the left hand, and then throw with the right hand a fourth time for the no mix up. Like that kind of misdirection, I think is kind of what was missing in this fight. So good defense there.
Was it the first or second that hit your arm? The first one, it started falling out. So
Okay, that was a clarification where I think you got the first block and then the second one got him. Good drive forward. There was some. I did see some of that guard that stays kind of at home and hangs over the advancing hand from Starling on that last one. That was real solid. I think like a horizontal or extended sword to kind of blade beat would be a great way of adding some pressure from the outside there as well. All right, so this is Morpheus. Was that Ace on the right? I'm not certain if that's the person or not. I think they had like that big square shield in the last one. Ace, yeah, okay, sick. All right, I'm remembering some of them. If I meet you in an event, you're gonna have to remind me who you are because there's just not enough detail in your face in these videos for me to recognize you. Just as a heads up. All right, let's get started back up here. All right. So we got vertical swords again, which I've kind of explained. Great lateral movement by Ace, moving back and forth. It looked like when Morpheus jumped out of the corner there, you moved to intercept him and keep him in the corner. That was great. It looked like you maybe could have taken like a second step to be like, no, dog, you are really cornered. You're staying in the corner. You kind of followed them one step and then maybe like aborted a little bit, perhaps to focus on your defense. But I think the idea is there, just maybe a little bit more commitment to keeping him in that corner. I don't know if that was a reset or just like watch the corner. Left on left. That looked like a good snipe. Like a good counter strike. That was good timing. Oh yeah. Adjudication. All right, let's get back to this. All right, we're back here. So Morpheus there doing a great job of creating some context with his right hand. I think before, did he come in with his left there? So he's like little under scoops to sensitize and frustrate. And then I think it's like a left-handed shot to the body. It wasn't a left-handed shot to the body. It looked like left-handed shot to maybe the arm and then a follow-up to the right. So there was some confusion because it barely nicked my glove, but there was no stopper deflection. Okay, that's fine. So I'm not going to try to follow their conversations. I know that I can't. Okay. But that was really solid. I felt like Morpheus took a little bit more control there. All right, back and forth. Side switching. Quick snipes. Alright, let him out of the corner there, but that's alright. Okay. So, just the main things I'm seeing. We're going to focus in on this last fight, since it was the longest. Alright. So step one is we've got the seam vertical sword step that we were talking about with Starling and Justicar. So like what you want to think about here is you want to have your swords doing something to create some confusion, right? You want to kind of think of it as like this here. It's like I've got this sword here and this sword here, and neither's really like in a position to block anything. Like at best, I think what your defense here is like, let's say hypothetically, if you stayed in this location, like what's actually covered, right? So what you're actually covering right now is you are covering these low quadrants with your hips, right? With the high quadrants here, whoops, are both, there's a button for this. Is it control? Yes, it's control. So, let's go back. So you're covering these low quadrants for your hips, right? So these are both covered. These are fine. High quadrants are open. So this is actually the reverse order of the way that a fight would pan out. So if you think about it, right? Because if the things that you're able to reach they're shaped like a dome, right? So if you kind of like move your hand through space like this, you can see how at the end of my hand, let's see if I can get back a little bit. You see how at the end of my hand, right, it's creating like a little bit of an arc, right? So the things that I can reach the furthest are straight out from my chest. And that for Morpheus over here, that's going to be, that furthest point is actually up here, right? So the way that the cones would connect are here. So a lot of the times I like a Muay Thai stance. So the way that this cone would be shaped, since the center point is this shoulder and the longest range that he can reach is going to be up here, I like to keep my hands kind of up high like this, the way like a Muay Thai fighter might, because I want to keep those top quadrants blocked off so that he has to advance closer to me to get those hips, right? So I'm not really a fan of having these hands this low. I would at least keep like one kind of high and then one kind of back at the very least, right? But I think having tight hands, basically what you're kind of communicating here is like you don't have a lot covered. It's kind of easy to get stabbed when you have two horizontal or two vertical swords like that, and you don't have anything blocked off. And the most important stuff is like not blocked off right now, right? So I think in my mind, it's kind of like a little bit backwards for what you would want. I think this is a good position to stutter from if you're going to take the offensive. But Morpheus is taller and longer than you, so that's kind of going to be his privilege. And the way that you're going to get him to open up is by using your footwork for the most part. So I think in this scenario, I'm playing at range where I'm not in threat range. But I definitely agree about making sure to move my swords and be more dynamic in general. Yeah, you want to think about it like if you have your swords like at the top, right? It's kind of like leaving the front gate open. Whereas if you like kind of cross your swords and have one vertical, one horizontal, or take like any kind of position, there is at least some sort of maze that they have to go through where they might kind of get like their arm taken off or something like that. So it's just this stance is like in terms of information, it's like kind of blank, right? So they're not going to get misled by what you're doing here very easily. And they're also not going to glean like much information, but like hiding your intent from your opponent is one thing. Like that's one layer, but the next layer is trying to mislead them in some way. And I feel like vertical parallel swords doesn't really like accomplish that. All right. You are doing a great job of stuttering with your footwork and going in and out. I think people usually call that needling, where you're like kind of jumping in and out of range. That's a really solid tactic. I think that tactic would be better with higher hands and raised swords because you would not be at risk of getting like downward chopped around, essentially. And you can see how like Morpheus isn't really like covering himself defensively with his swords. And I think that makes sense because like he's got the range. He's got plenty of time to assume a block. But he is creating information with his swords by constantly moving them around just to throw some smoke on which hand that he intends to use next. So it's kind of different. Like when someone has the privilege of range, they're going to be able to do some slightly different things than you're able to do. And when you don't have that range, you have to be a little bit safer with your sword positioning, a little bit more conservative. So you can tell that Morph really wants to reach out, but is experienced enough to not overextend good work. Yeah, that's certainly true. It's like he's using his reach really well, but he's not like, well, I'm tall, so I can do whatever the fuck I want. Like he's definitely positioning himself very intelligently. All right, so we've got Toby, and you guys tell me who was on the right again. This guy. We had it last time, but I'm forgetting what it was. Vulcan. Okay. Okay. We've got kind of like low swords, in my opinion. Not completely parallel. We've got like some crossing here. It's an interesting choice. For this last exchange right here, I wouldn't have expected Toby to. He's not hand matched right now, and he leads with an underscoop from his left hand. And I was like, that's strange. But he did like a shallow underscoop that looked like it was maybe not like a serious underscoop. And the real shot was like a flat wrap over the top with his right hand. I wonder if that was intentional. That he just did a great job of keeping his hands extended and controlling until he got something. So that was solid. I really like how Toby pressed in there and then backed up slowly to try to just get like some kind of reaction from Vulcan. And I like that he didn't go hog wild when he had an opening and try to like hit him with everything. He just very patiently took his arm and reset and is going to try to pick him apart now. Yeah, I just waited for a quick leg opening and took it. Okay, let's see why that happened. It looked like Vulcan got that in with his left hand, just as a snipe at max range. Let me see if that's correct. Yeah, it looked like Vulcan did like a rising chop. I'm surprised that that got in. It looked like just a good extension on that. It just wasn't prepared for that. I think it was maybe hanging out a tiny bit close. All right, so I think this is like the last round. I don't know what the score is. Okay, yeah, it looked like Toby kind of just walked up. So I think what we had here is it looks like Vulcan kind of walked up and stopped and was static and didn't really control the range and kind of just took like when he felt like his arm was taken, he looked like he tried to throw with his right hand to the body to try to reset. I think that was just not, Toby was not going to let that happen. I think Vulcan needed some more like active feet here. And Toby just kind of picked them apart for that. So I think relatively simple analysis there. Do we know, this is Italian on the left. And let me know who we've got on the right for this one. Okay. All right, that's a good snipe. I look like we missed the block. Okay, yeah, we maintain like good control. We have like Italian has like some horizontalness to his guard here. I think we're like a little bit. That's Dolo. Oh, I did not recognize them for some reason. Sorry. I think I can only recognize Dolo when they have like the Cubone hat on. I'm sorry, I'm just not. I don't have a lot of depth of character as a person. You have to keep the same hat on, or I'm not going to know who you are. I'm a lot like a dog in that way. Like if your hat comes off, I'm like, who is this fucking person? All right, so that's Italian and Dolo. So I think what we had here was it looked like Italian kind of like lost control of this a little bit. What I would have done here, I think, is take this sword, Italian's right hand. I think what I would do, if I was Italian in this situation, what I would do is if Dolo's only got this sword left, and it's in his right hand, if he's only got this sword left, if I was Italian, what I would do is consider like hand matching with my left hand, but keep it home a little bit, and then with the right hand, I would have it out and horizontal. That way, if Jolo kind of tries to come in with this right hand, I can see if I can either sweep it offline with this front hand, or if he goes deep for a hip wrap, I move the left hand down the block and chop that way, right? So you have kind of a designated like blade beating hand in front, which is going to kind of try to guide them to throw deeper, and then catch the deeper shot with the deeper hand, and then kind of chop them out that way. But I think having both swords vertical here, I think that forfeited a lot of control. I think we're also a little bit static in our footwork as well for Italian. So I think he kind of accidentally had like a situation where he was like very sure to win and kind of dropped it a little bit. Let's go back. I think what Dolo did here was like just a really good big loop feint. It's like I'm down to my right hand. I like how he feinted out at what would be this left arm on Italian, went under it, and then came back around to it. I think what that kind of communicates to the opponent is like, hey, like I missed this shot, it's safe. And then they're like, okay, well then I don't need to move it if it's safe. And then you kind of wrap around and throw it. So I think that was a good one. And it looked like he got body there, so we got a reset. I like the guards that we came in with here. It looked like we've got basically like a simultaneous strike. I think taking that as Italians win. So in situations like that, you want to kind of play a little bit more. I feel like if someone walks up to me, I don't want to like counter strike the first shot if I don't know them, but it looked like both of them kind of jumped and were aggressive on that one. I don't know if one person won or the other, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. But I think in situations where you are meeting someone for the first time in a tournament, you really need to spend a lot of time on the outside edge of range and kind of needle in and try to derive some context and see what you do, right? Like, don't just walk up there and stand and wait for them to dive on you. Try to make them commit to some kind of footwork, movement, stutter, something to get some information to act on. I think in Florentine especially, like, you have, in a situation that just started, you have no reason to believe that they're going to use one hand specifically over the other, right? So it's like doubly dangerous to get in close. Whereas like with sword and board, I only really need to react to the hand that your sword is in, right? Like this is a non-shield contact game. And even in shield contact games, most of the time shield contact is really just aggravating and inconvenient unless it's like a huge check or something like that, right? With Florentine, we have fast reaction speed, but we don't always know if we're going to be looking at the correct thing to react to it. So that your prediction is much more difficult in that. So I would definitely keep like a longer fighting measure in Florentine than I would in any other combination, and a slightly longer fighting measure between me and someone that I don't know. Fighting measure being the distance between both opponents. We got a good cross guard here on Dolo. I think that was a simul. They guys just stabbed each other. I think that was like almost the same replay as like the last fight where both guys kind of came in and like, we're gonna bang it out. We're not gonna hang out and learn anything about each other. So we kind of reset there. So you definitely need like more patience. It's hard to tell like who's doing the pressing and offense there because it seems kind of mutual. And so you have to kind of figure out like what you're going to agree to and what you're not going to agree to. I would argue that like in Florentine, if your opponent is going to be offensive, you also being offensive is not really on the table in the way that sword and board might be, because you don't have the extra defensive coverage of the shield to like cover for any small mistake. Like you've got, if you make a small mistake in Florentine, now you don't have less defense, you have 0 now, right? So if someone's like, I'm definitely going to be offensive, you don't really have a choice except to be defensive, or simultaneous is another strategy that you can use. It could be the meta sometimes, but that's kind of not my goal. So I think this shot 3. So this is basically like a lot like a Western standoff where they're getting really close. A tumbleweed blows by and they just swing at each other. So I went more creation of context on the outside, because this is almost like both of these guys are kind of like rolling the dice on their reaction speed to carry them through. And it's like most humans have about the same reaction speed, right? Most reaction speed is more like the situational knowledge that the more experienced person will pretty much always beat you on, because they can recognize the language of what certain body postures mean. But like if you're talking about like raw reaction speed and you're not sure that you have a higher experience level than the other guy, you got to assume that you guys are at like at least the same speed. That's just not the strategizing that I would want to see. This is better. So it looks like Dolo is continuing to be offensive, and Talion, I think, is adjusted and said, okay, I got Simon 3 times. I need to take some defense now, so that's good. It also looks like Talion's left hand is creating some defense for his right hand when he's trying to swing with it. It looks like he's stuttering and kind of not sensing that he has a safe opportunity to swing, which is fine. But I saw his left hand creeping over there, so that's very good. That's cuts. Okay. I think that was like better patience on Talion's part there, and I think he made the correct adjustments. This is Vulcan and Morpheus. On the outside. Your Vulcan swords are a little vertical in my opinion. Morpheus keeping some movement open to keep some confusion going. It looks like he's taking a stance where his back sword that he's not hand matching with is gonna stay home and block for him. So I like that. It's not like a parallel vertical stance. There's some defensive planning there. So they just tried to counter stab and got blocked out and bonked for it. All right. Good lateral. It looked like a missed hip there. I feel like throwing low in Florentine without some kind of real good fake or real good lateral movement is extremely risky. The taller you are, the less risky it is, but it's not where I like to start. I like to start my Florentine fights at max range with high quadrants and then slowly build into getting those lower quadrants when I get a bead on the opponent's habits and footwork, right? So it's fine. Morpheus is very tall, less risk there for sure. So with Morph keeping his hand so close to his body while Vulcan is armed, it invites the shot, especially the stab, and I love to see it. That makes sense. I feel like I don't want to bait people to swing at me in Florentine more than I have to, because it feels risky for me. But I could see how it would be. Like, I'm 5'6", so I don't want anybody swinging at me. I need to get in there and swing. So we got a leg down, single sword. This is always really tricky because I feel like I would rather be the person who's missing down an arm than be down a leg, because movement is life, especially like when you have a range advantage over someone. But now you have a giant range advantage, right? Because you have more natural reach and the other person's legged. But it's tough in Florentine though, because like it's really easy to just make sure that you get a leg as they come forward. Because like your cone, if you look at the cone of attack here, instead of, I think the center point, right, is going to be this shoulder on Vulcan. So the cone of attack is something like the sphere of his range. It's going to be something like this. And you can see how this is going to intersect a little bit lower towards the leg right here. Whereas the cone of attack for Morpheus is going to be more like, it's not exactly centered, but you can see how this could be a disadvantage sometime because Morpheus's reach is kind of like lowered in a sense here, because if this is the furthest distance that he can reach, it's like somewhere up here, since he has to swing kind of down into the sphere of things that he can reach, his range ends up getting shortened a little bit. But when you're legged like this, right, this whole sphere shifts down, so this leg is a lot easier to access. So it's like, it's not the worst thing in the world, but you do have to be mindful of, like, in some ways, now this person on their legs has longer reach than you. I think Morpheus has more access to different options that he can use, especially like if he moves offline very subtly. But it's just kind of a tossed-up situation. It's important to think about the parameters there. It's also tough. I think Morpheus is right-handed too, so this is like offhand in a situation. Looks like he sniped them. That's good. Maybe. Let me see that again. Just trying to see what happened here. Yeah, I could be convinced that that was a block for sure. And I think that was a clean hit, so I think Morpheus got that one. I think what I would have done, or wanted to see a little bit more of, is we've got lots of space that we could play with out around these directions. it's okay to bait someone out from out here, but I think it's a little bit more effective to add in some circling and lateral movement, because it's really tough to adjust your footing when you don't have feet anymore, right? You have to kind of pick your knees up and orient yourself to your opponent. Now, you don't need to go this far. It's fine to just go like this far and use a little bit of side to side. I think Morpheus did a great job of just using like stutters and timing to take him out, but I think that there's another tool here that he could have accessed to try to get like an even cleaner kill, essentially. But expert work on that defense. That looked good. I believe that was a block. Okay, we're resetting. Alright, it's lateral. Right hand stutter from Morpheus. Another right hand stutter. Jamming the left. I think Morpheus was kind of setting that up, but then Vulcan kind of jumped him as he started to sense that he was getting set up. Refigure indicates it was a block. Okay, thank you. Looked like a block. Ooh, such a good shot. Oh, man. Oh, so why did this happen? I think what happened here is it looks like Vulcan tried a horizontal chop, but when he reset his guard, he reset to like a vertical guard. I think that's one of the reasons where I'm like, you need that house guard to kind of create a roof for yourself, to create some defense. Because if you reset vertically in Florentine, you do not have a guard unless you manage to like get it exactly on your fist. So I think that was just like a return to form error on Vulcan's part, and Morpheus took absolute advantage of that. That's right here. You can see him kind of come. Yeah, you can see him come out like that. And Morpheus just threw a good slide in. It stopped him. So that was great. Good fights. Toby and I think we had this person's name last time. So let me know what it is in the chat. Dragon. Okay, thank you. Let's go back. I think that was Toby. So I think that looked like Toby set up some context with his left hand by chopping to the outside, and then snuck his right hand in there, which makes a lot of sense. If you aren't super confident in your left hand in Florentine, one thing that I think that people should start with is just throw some real safe left-handed chops with you want to have like a minimal commitment poke on the end of your range with your left hand to communicate to your opponent, like, I can hit you with this hand. That doesn't have to be true. You just have to make them believe it's true, right? So if you know for a fact, like, I'm really right hand dominant in Florentine, just throw some stuff with your left that's safe to get that sword in play so that you can use it to stutter and create openings. And I think that that's precisely what Toby did here. He's pretty good with his left hand. I'm just adding as an aside, if you're not confident in your left hand, this is a good way to start. Okay, here, I think this fight is an example of getting too close and being static within the other person's range, and you need to be continually moving laterally and keep a little bit more distance. Because if you let people settle in, what you're doing is set up a situation that you have to react on, or you will get hit. And I really feel like most foam fighting is quite close to unreactable when you are close up. That is why I like to fight at that range with the shield, and that is why I do not fight at that range with Florentine, because it's just, and not only is it extremely hard to react to, we have two swords to react to, so it's probably not going to happen. Alright, so Chubby's doing a good job here of setting up some threats with his left hand, and he's got his right hand crossing over to protect it. Let's see what he does with that. Okay, so I think that Chubby got sniped here, and that's fine, but I like what he did, right? Where he's starting with his left hand, and he's got some defensive stacking where his right hand is covering his left hand, which is communicating left hand, left hand, left hand, and then Toby goes with his right, which is fine. It looks like he kind of got double stabbed on like kind of a as a rare mix-up, which is fine. But I think that's another reason that you just don't want to lock down too close to people, because like the stabs are really hard to block. And if someone stabs you with both swords, like I don't know why we kind of think that it's like a joke attack. A lot of the time, I dare anybody in the chat or at Amcard in general to block 2 stabs at one time. It is fucking blisteringly hard, and I think it's just always important to remember that it is an option for the dude to just form a human equal sign and stab you at 2 different locations at the same time as like basically like a suicide attack. And honestly, your best hope there is just try to hit him back in simul, right? So that's where you keep it a long range and moving laterally continually, is to try to minimize the chances of that happening. I don't care who you are. I don't care how good you say you are at Florentine. You probably ain't blocking 2 stabs at the same time. And you're going to feel dumb when it hits you, even though it's really powerful. Alright, left hand context. Okay, I think this was, it looked like Dragon's Win here. And I think it looked like we had the same issue with locking down static too close. And also this time we're kind of just trying to fly with our right hand only. I think is what ended up happening here. I got to keep that footwork up. You keep it up. So this is Big Head, and I don't remember who the person on the right is. So let me know in the chat. I liked the right hand swirls. You had like some swirling with your right hand to get him to look at it, and then a good deep left-handed rising chop there. And then after that left-handed lead, you kind of came with your right hand and chopped them up. Okay, that was a short one. Yeah, that's still a good setup. All right, this is Morpheus. I'm not sure who this person is. Okay. It's Destroyer. Okay, thank you. Got stabbed for that. Okay, for Destroyer, what we've got. So we start off with, we've got like some horizontalness to our guard here, and that's good, right? So what we've got, this stance communicates that I want to jab with this hand while this hand stays home and protects me, right? And that's fine, but I think that's kind of not quite what we did. So this indicates to me that like Destroyer has seen people fight Florentine pretty frequently, but maybe has not quite like dove into the theory of it too much yet. So we've got a lot of nice outside pumps to try to say like, hey, I'm going to go out wide. But then we kind of like lose that stance, and we're going to even switch our feet to just, you can make the argument that like when you switch your feet like that, it erases all the context that you've built. so that your opponent doesn't really have any context at that point. But that's not something that I would do at an experience deficit. That's something that you would do when you're like, I know I'm faster than this guy, better than this guy, I have better trained in this combo. I'm going to just wipe the context clean by switching my feet and switching my stance and then going in immediately. That's not something that you want to do at an experience disadvantage. The way that you beat experienced fighters or people who are like, quote unquote, like better than you or have been playing the game longer than you is you have to trick them, right? Because essentially you have to think about it in the sense of like, as you're learning and getting better, you react to things faster because you have more experiences. You don't have to think as much about what you're doing, but you need to try to trick them on what they have to think about. And you can take advantage of the fact that people that have more experience than you are highly analytical. So it's much, I'm not going to say it's easy to mislead them. I am going to say it's easier to mislead them than beat them on reaction. You're probably not going to do that at an experience disadvantage. So you can see Morpheus in the early parts there, cataloging all of Destroyer's left-handed responses before he even steps to the danger range. So good. Yeah, for sure. But we kind of switched our feet, erased the context after setting up some outside stutters with our left hand, and then just kind of didn't capitalize on it. We had the 1-2 there, which is it's not bad. I feel like 1-2s for Florentine typically aren't like, I'm going to hit your left side, I'm going to hit your right side. It's more like I'm going to hit the left side of one sword and then the right side on one sword. You would hit like left side of their body and then right side of their body, but not at like max range, right? Because if you're throwing out around wide with both hands, it's very easy for slots to come down and hit you in the shoulders. So it's like good theory. There's some misdirection there, but not at the hands at that range, in my opinion. So this looks good. This is a good stance by Destroyer. He's got his main hand and he's got his protecting hand. And I think he just kind of, that felt like he approached unconfidently and then Morpheus just kind of beat him on reaction. So it's like, I think the main take home here is like, if you are less experienced than the person in front of you or less quick, you don't want to try to beat them on reaction. You need to beat them with planning and strategy. You can't just like come in and wing it because it's not going to work. Okay, unknown, and you guys told me their name. I mean, the last time. Threw away my paper with their names on it. Good. God. That is smart to step out when you lost your balance there to like get a quick reset and not give them the opportunity. That's smart. Okay, I think Unknown threw with the reset there. So I want to call out, I know we discussed last time that Matrix is a primarily a red fighter, right? And that's fine. We kind of talked about how like one-handed sword select not their thing. That's fine. But I want to call out how powerful their lateral movement was here and how much it did for them, right? So like they got like they didn't get the attack there, but they got an opening with that initial drive of lateral footwork. That this one didn't pan out for them too well. I think Unknown just had like superior defense and discipline in his hands and just didn't open anything up. But here we did get like a snipe. I think maybe it wasn't this one. What was the next one? Where Matrix's lateral footwork essentially opened up like just a good snipe, right? So like that was all power by footwork. And I think that illustrates of like how powerful that lateral movement and positioning can be. Where just like a couple of real fast back and forths and just all Unknown did wrong there. Like his guard was in position, but he was off by maybe like an inch or two, right? So that's what lateral footwork does for you in Florentine. Lateral footwork is always really important. I think that it is an S tier tactic in Florentine. I think it's like only A tier in board because you have so much coverage. You still want to be using it if you can, but in Florentine it's like absolutely critical. And you can kind of see if you've played Elden Ring or Expedition 33, the stat scaling of like how much you get out in damage for the amount that you have in that stat. Like the lateral movement stat scaling is fucking cracked. Like it's super good. It's like if you don't have your hand in the precise position on the outside of the cone of attack, you have no guard at all. And Unknown was off by like 2 inches there. He did the right thing here where he just kind of threw to his set. That's what you do when you're down an arm in Florentine. Just try to make it hard for him and try to get a reset, get your sword back. And that was like just, I think this fight, if I'm right, I think Matrix did not use that lateral footwork, and so they like lost that stat scaling. So they're still here now, and I know it's like, okay, it's me time. I boxed them for it, right? So I think that's like a really good case study of why that's so critical in Florentine. So this is, I believe this is Dragon and Big Head. You guys have played Elden Ring, right? With like stat scaling stuff. You guys are following me. So big forward lean. I like that blade beat to keep Dragon uncomfortable for sure. That was good stuff. Was that the body? Okay. You got it, Elden Ring, man. It's required reading for LARP, dude. You got to do it. I think stat scaling is in like Dark Souls, Expedition 33. It's just like a measure of like, for every point you get into it, you get this much damage out of that point, I think. That looked like a good body shot here. And I like the small blade beat here was really good because you got him thinking it's going to be the right hand. Keep thinking about that right hand. Sneak in the left there with a good slash. That's good. Okay, that was... This was kind of by Dragon, I think this was like an overcommitment from his right hand. So we have like a big lunge here and a big turn around here, and we do not have our sword in the right position to block. We would need this sword laying across this way. And that's literally just a turn of a wrist away from creating good defensive coverage. I think that was for Dragon. Like, again, when we're down in Army Florentine, we want to try to reset, and we need to use our lateral footwork and stutters to try to like draw some attacks to work off of or get some kind of advantage in positioning. But it looks like Dragon tried to get that attack by just kind of like faking and coming in, and it's just too hard of an approach there. I think maybe he felt emboldened by the fact that he kind of has Big Head in the corner. Not completely, but like somewhat cornered. But I think this was just too hard and too obvious of a forward drive, and we needed to just be patient, play on the outside a little bit more, and try to create some confusion to try to get that Simon, get that arm back. Okay, Big Head can block 2 stabs at once. I think that was more like a dodge, but I think this is a good example of like keeping your range control very tight here, right? So we've got like some forward lean from Big Head, which means that his weight is kind of loaded in this leg, which means that he's going to be able to retreat a little bit better because this forward leg is like pre-bent, right? So the muscle just has to contract and it'll shoot him backwards. This is like a very good stance for moving backwards with your center of gravity kind of forward like this and over that leg. It's not a great, I think this would put Big Head at a disadvantage for like approaching. He would maybe want to be a little bit more upright for that so that he can shift more weight to this back leg. But he used this position perfectly, right? Where he's like, okay, I think he's going to double stab me. And then he just pops back and crosses him and gets just enough out of the way. There's a quick pop back too for a big dude. It's good stuff. I think the rest of that was just like kind of fading out, catching a block, and getting a quick hit on something. So I think the main input I've got here for Dragon is like you can't just go straight in. I think your first, it's best to assume, in my opinion, that your first attack or two is probably not going to hit your opponent. So don't be too serious about it. Like, you want to not try to commit to anything all of a sudden that's going to get you killed. You need to just take a little bit of time, create some confusion, create some context with lateral movement, stutters, safe shots. There's lots of things at your disposal to try to just create something that your opponent has to think about. And you can't just fake them out without implanting the idea in their head that you can hit them with it. This is Toby and Morpheus. Okay, small lateral adjustments by Toby. That's good. We can use a couple more. That's too big of a lunge. Like, you have to watch when you lunge forward against someone who is taller than you. Your lunge needs to be. Let's see if I get this back. Your lunge needs to be straightforward. This lunge was more like in and down. Whoops, I keep messing this up. I forgot the arrowhead starts where you click. This lunge is more like in and down, right? So what this does is this sinks Toby's guard down because he kind of lunged too far. So like lunges aren't like a straightforward motion like this. It's not straightforward. A lunge, in terms of the physics, looks more like a crest like this. And if you try to lunge too far, you start going lower like this. And that's dangerous against someone who's really tall, because someone who's that much taller than you, their shots are going to come from up here in this direction and move kind of down. So if you're lunging deep, it kind of pulls you down like this, which opens up these shots to kind of come down at you, right? So instead of doing one big lunge, you want to do chains of smaller lunges such that you remain as upright as possible and don't get pulled into a low position. If you get pulled into a low position by your own lunge in sword and board, like, that's fine. It's recoverable in sword and board because you can throw money with your shield over your head. You can duck down and scoop up like that. You cannot recover from that in Florentine, right? Like, if you go deep, so deep that you start going low, you better kill them or you are super dead for that. So it's just like a kind of a fact about lunges that people don't kind of consider, where it's like, you don't got to do it in one, man. You can do it in two. If you want to do a big lunge, it's best to set it up with a little bit of lateral movement to add some confusion first. But you need to keep like this vertical arc to the lunge in common, because a lunge is kind of like, it's not like a step forward, right? It's really more like a low jump forward. And if you're trying to, you can only jump so far forward before you have to kind of like pick up your legs so that you fall a little bit more to get even closer. So it's just, that has to do with the structure of lunges. I think what's interesting is, like, Toby is a boxer, right? So he's pretty competent with both hands. But I think that if he played Florentine more like his boxing background does, he would do a little bit better. And this seems more like a fencing kind of footwork for Florentine, which I think is just like, it's too committal, especially against someone who's at a range advantage. All right, little lateral, little bit, little more. 2 foot switches, or maybe just like canceling the first foot switch. Good block there. Staying a little higher this time. That looks better. Okay, we're moving our left hand. Let's see if we attack with it or use it to fade. I'm not gonna read the discussion. I want to look at this attack again. I think it was like, this was kind of a look at the left hand and then did like a kind of a reaching setup with the right. That if I'm correct, it looked like a high chop and a low chop. Yeah, it was a chop and then a scoop, which I think is like a really good combo. I think it might have been safer to throw that initial chop as a flat cross with the offhand and then scoop up with the low hand, because the flat cross, especially if you power it with a lateral step in the direction that you're shooting, it can cover both lanes temporarily if you power it with that lateral step, and it's faster. You're doing it with both hands. Your offhand ends up in the correct blocking position. There's just some optimizations I might try to add to that attack. I feel like the other part is like trying to wave the sword to draw their attention to it. I think in the context of like fighting a warlord, that's probably not enough threat. Like, I don't know if you've noticed, but every warlord is doing that in this tournament, right? They're continually moving an offhand sword. I think Big Head and Morpheus are from the same area, so it makes sense that that's like a common theme between their styles, right? But you have to make the assumption that, like, well, if they're fighting each other and they're both doing that, they're both very much used to that. So you probably need to go a step deeper in terms of creating some confusion with that offhand to be able to make that work. So it's a slightly more committal, but you can throw some chops with that left hand, especially if you move to the left as you throw with the left hand to create more context. You just gotta work it in there so you can find your opening. So same park, we've been fighting each other for just under 2 decades. Yeah, so I knew you guys were from the same kingdom. I didn't realize you guys were from the same park. That's pretty cool. I wish I had a sparring partner that lasted for 2 decades, for sure. I think I've very recently gotten up to sparring partners that have lasted about 5 or 6 years, but I felt like it's just always switching where I lived or switching parks or switching states or whatever. But I've had consistent practice with people. And it's always super interesting how long-term practice partners evolve to like engage with each other. How many warlords do you have? That's St. Louis, right? Am I correct about the city? You guys might get a visit. I heard Rose is moving down that way. I owe her like 2 or 3 visits. So I'm in debt at this point. All right. Moving forward. That was a good attack, though. The same side chop and scoop. So St. Louis, technically, was moving a couple hours away. Okay, that's fair. Okay, I think this was just... So we still have that left hand waving, but we don't have the left hand threat. And we also had, I don't know if you guys picked that up, but that was the same attack as the previous round. Right hand chop, right hand scoop from Toby, even complete with like the left hand waving around to create that context. So I think you have to, it's okay to use the same move twice, but you have to sandwich other junk moves between it to get them to stop paying attention to the shot that worked. This is probably too early to use that same strategy again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9. So many. Dang. They're all good too. Those are some good names. I'm jealous. I'm jealous. All right, we got unknown, and I don't know who the person on the left is. If you guys can throw that in the chat. Arabia says Larry. Okay, we're gonna go for Arabia. Thank you. All right. Ah, that's the same shot. The scoop to shoulder wrap. I was just talking to Unknown today because I repurposed that same shot that we talked about in board. And Unknown says, hey, this works in Florentine too. I got to admit, I'm like a huge Florentine snob. I trained with like spin and kind of came up just after Peter. I'm like, no, it doesn't. It won't work in Florentine. And yet, here it is. So it's good to see. I'm definitely going to give that a shot. And I think it's what I like about that outward sweep up into the shoulder wrap is that the right hand temporarily exits the place it's quote unquote supposed to be, but the shoulder wrap puts it right back where it's supposed to be to guard like a high quadrant shot, and it kind of draws in action there as well. So that's good. I'm pumped to use that. I need to practice that with my left hand too, because I feel like I just did almost a year of like left-handed fighting, so I think that would be a good thing to add to that game. So I'm going to keep that in mind. Also, kudos to Unknown for fighting without gloves, man. I'm a coward. That would hurt my fingers. My fingies, if you will. Okay. So I think that was either, I know that Unknown called dead. I think that was maybe like a simul. Let's see what we have for Arabia here. For Arabia, I think like I've talked about some of the points before. I think that we have that vertical guard that I'm not a huge fan of. And I think our right hand is doing too much work. So we definitely want one horizontal sword to do like a little bit of jabbing, some blade beating, and have some defensive control and not have the goalpost stance. Because it's just like, you can't, like, the vertical guard has the issue of, like, yes, your vertical chops are fast, but if you want to, like, throw a wrap shot, you have to do, like, a much bigger sweep than if you're, like, horizontal, it comes forward, too. I feel like just that horizontal makes it a little bit easier on the outside to move into another shot, whereas, like, outside and vertical feels like a little bit more awkward to try to aim. I feel like it's easier to get a sword from horizontal to vertical than from vertical to horizontal. Maybe I don't know if that's true. Just in the power generation phase of the shot, it might just be how I think about it. So I feel like I want that top part of it to be in that top quadrant house guard piece. You know what? That's probably garbage. That's probably just like how I fight. Never mind. But I still agree. I still believe that vertical two swords is not quite what we want. Okay. Look how we parried the stab and got like a cross trap in there. Okay, good slot. I'm gonna go back a fight. I want to see the stab and see if we had anything we could work off here. I think stabs categorically, especially in Florentine, single sword as well, they fall into a category of things where because they're committal and unsafe and you can't parry off them very well, like you either get the stab and win or you usually die, in my opinion. So I think that stabs are something that I would not use as shot one in an exchange unless there may be that you've found something really enticing that you wanted to do, or like you may have seen the vertical guard and you're like, yeah, I bet I can like stab this guy. I think I probably still would have wanted to move around a little bit first to ensure that I'm going to get them in a position where they're thinking about other things and not prepared to block that stab. So it seemed like he just kind of, you were banking on him not reacting in time, and he did. It just can be surprising when that happens, but that's why I would like reserve my stabs for when I've already created like some kind of layer of misdirection, because there's no coming back from that stab for both people. I think like the fight is over usually when you stab, so misdirection layers first. Great chop, great accuracy there. I think the other thing that makes Florentine really hard that people don't often consider terribly much is like when you're fighting Florentine on Florentine, the lack of defensive leeway, the extra weapon, the big target areas, the fact that you need to get like kind of close in to hit the other guy, and the close range zone is like extremely dangerous. I think it's one of those situations where like it's very easy for an experienced player to lose against like a less experienced player, because the nature of that conflict is so much more dangerous than something like sword and board, or even like single sword. Like you can make the argument that you don't have like a shield in single sword, so it's easy to get killed by random stuff. But it's like that effect is 10 times more dramatic in Florentine, where you could just make the mistake of like looking at the wrong sword or assuming their handedness on accident, like maybe they're actually like a lefty or something like that. So that's one of the situations where I would be like super careful. Okay, good. Great offhand coverage on that snipe. That was solid. Perfect. We got Morpheus and Dragon. We can't really see this. We'll catch the next one. I think this is Dragon kind of approaching Raw, and Morpheus is kind of just sniping him with hip wraps. That's what happens. You got to create that misdirection first before you come in. That's what happens when you come in without creating that misdirection first to get stabbed. So we got ads of 45 seconds. I know this is going to be a great fight, so we're going to stop just a tiny bit early before our quick break, and I'm going to get a drink of water, get my voice working again. So I will be right back. Okay, we're back. This is Unknown versus Morpheus. I moused over the preview for the next fight with like the thumbnail. I think it's going to be big-headed Morpheus in like a 10-minute war, so I'm excited to see that. I think that was the one where you said there was like a lot of discussion and trying to figure out what shots are what, so we'll probably try to skip as much of the discussion as we can. And you'll probably remember the outcome, so you'll have to let us know. But first, it's Unknown and Morpheus. I did not see what happened. Go back, please. Okay, good cross stance here. Okay. Yeah, it's our favorite shot again. Man, that does work, Florentine. I think it looks like it connected, and I believe that Morpheus threw low there. So just to reiterate my point from last week, like having a very strong shot one is so powerful in tournaments, because like if it's relatively consistent, the other guy has to catch up, and then you've got plenty of room to like think and analyze and prepare yourself for the next round. So I love the use of that. Like if I didn't have videotape, I would not have figured out that he's doing that. Because it's just really hard to figure that kind of thing out in person, because people like your competitors aren't always watching that closely, and they can't back things up and rewind and watch them in slow motion. So it's super hard to catch if you're like repeating that opening shot. All right, good. Good lateral pressure. Okay. I think it looked like Morpheus. I don't know if this started late, but they kind of fist bumped and walked off, so I may be wrong about what happened on fight one. It might have been, I think I see Morpheus flinching there, actually, now, so that may have been like face on that. And then something else hit. Yeah, it looked like I was mistaken. The camera angle's not great for it, but it looked like what happened is that we got a shot to the face here, and then I think, I'm not precisely sure where Morpheus' swords went. I think this, I have to completely redo my shot now. Well, when you get a second one, please show me that one too, because I'm almost 40 years old, bud. I can't be making new shots. I have to steal them. So let me know what you come up with, okay? Thanks for being my brain trust unknown. Yeah, it looked like, so from the position that we're looking at, right, it's a little bit small because you can't stick your nose in the screen like I can. But there's plenty of like, there's plenty of shoulder real estate that you could have hit here. I think you just got unlucky and he went down low for a deep shot and you got face, right? So like that's just, them's the breaks. I don't think that, sometimes that kind of stuff is unavoidable. I still really like your plan here and your use of this. So it seemed like, let's see if we can piece together why Morpheus took this one. I think it was just like, I don't know if maybe he detected that you were leading consistently with your right hand. And you've got that horizontal guard. You've got this horizontal guard here. So I think what he's seeing is this hip is open, right? And if I remember correctly, it looks like you kind of leave that in place and circle in front of your sword. Yeah, and you came down here kind of late, so I wonder if what we could do. So you have this horizontal guard, and this is the hand. You're doing this circle and sweep like that, right? Well, one thing that I kind of noticed with this shot is that if we take this hand out of it, right, and we circle and sweep over like that, right, while this sword is sweeping up like this, because of the positive force in the sword coming up, this is still a block. So if he hits you here on your sweep up and tries to cross there, it's going to stop the shot, right? It might stop your shot too, but you're not going to get hit for it. So I wonder if maybe the thing to do with your offhand on this shot, with your kind of horizontal and you're coming over like this, and this is just a brainstorm, what if you came down with this hand to block the hip automatically in Florentine? Because if you shift this down when you sweep up, now you have a block on two quadrants for a moment until this sword comes over and wraps the shoulder, and you could come back up and complete that guard and come back, and now you got two high guards. So like when the right hand sword looks like circle sweep like this, maybe the left hand sword could go from cross block to hip block to back up to like a high quadrant guard. Just a thought to maybe make that a little bit more powerful. You'll have to let me know what you think. or if you feel like that's worth trying. Because I feel like when you have both hands in those top quadrants, we can make the assumption that, like, it's Florentine, man. He's going to swing on you. People are going to swing on you. They're not going to wait for you to block, right? You could make the assumption that, like, they're going to try to jump you. So they're probably going to throw low if you show them that opening and press on them. And low is the only thing open. So just an idea for getting that offhand more active during that. That's something that I'm going to play with too. I'm going to try with this. I'm going to try this shot in Florentine like you suggested, because it's definitely fucking doing work, dude. It's like, it's doing work like, you know, just hard working farm work, like tending the soil and stuff, like hard work. I'll play test it tomorrow to see if it works. Okay, let me know, man. Let me know. I think it's just an instinct. It's a super fun shot to play with, man. I landed a couple times yesterday. I practiced it I worked from home, so I practiced it like every 10 minutes or something. Well, more like a couple times, maybe once every hour or something when I was taking my nose off my programming. So I'd throw like 20 or so to get it to work, because the shield movement is a little bit complex. And I landed it a couple of times. I was like, it felt fucking good. Does a lot of work, like something that does a lot of work. I need to complete more metaphors like that, or similes, as it were. It's a metaphor when you don't use the word like. Landed a couple of times is an understatement. That's like 5, 6. No one's counting. All right, continuing on. It's a good shot. All right. Good lateral pressure. Okay. So I think that you kind of just got sniped out here. Yeah, I think it looks like... I think that your hand is a little bit low. And what happened here is Morpheus knows that he got you in the hip. So he's trying to pull your hand a little bit low. Now, I think the assumption that you can make here is that if you are... Let's see if I get a good frame. Okay, so if you're at this range with Florentine, this is too low for your hand unless you want this right here, right? Unless you want him to throw there. I think I maybe wouldn't want to try to get into a reaction time based game like with another Warlord where you have like a passive bait, because it's just risky. They're super fast. They might use the bait against you. Where this would need to be is more like you can kind of connect the line of your shoulder and his shoulder right here. So your fist, in order to block this off, would need to be more like, instead of from here, we would move it up to about here, and maybe like bend your elbow a little bit to pull it back like that, because you want to cross off this top line. And what you could do is you can make the assumption that he can maybe like step forward and reach you here with like to a top quadrant. He can step forward and reach you, but he can't step forward and hit you low down here. He would have to lunge real deep to do that, and that's going to take a lot longer, and you'll be able to read that. So I think I might try to say, like, I think that you've done a great job of making him use more lateral footwork by leveraging your own. Morpheus has been more active with his feet in this fight than any other fight. So I would maybe try to keep that pressure up and keep this blocked off and try to draw him low again. Maybe say like, hey, you got that before, why don't you fucking try that again, buddy? And kind of like hang back and see if you can get him to lunge forward, overcommit, and then block him out. Yeah, you look like you didn't realize you were in his go range on that hop in. It's fair. That's hard to estimate. It's a very long. It's Fuzz and Morpheus. Oh, that's Fuzz from CG, I think. Fun fact, Fuzz is originally from St. Louis. We went to middle school. Oh, wow, middle school. Dang. Yeah, he's up here. I don't see much of him. We haven't ever really talked. I think he's been here for a decade, and we just don't have much to say. That's fun. He got pretty far in Florentine. Let's see where we're at. Okay, good horizontal guard. Okay, that's a quick. So this is. I'm always nervous fighting in Vibrams. Maybe that feels good, but I feel like the foot support for uneven ground is really important. I feel like the only people that should be wearing Vibrams are like really, really light people, because the turning, cutting, and pivoting is really tough on your feet and your toes, and it's easy to like dislocate one or break one. So this footwork that Fuzz is using here, his legs are very straight. He's kind of shifting back and forth. So like you see him kind of rhythmically sweeping back and forth. So the term I tend to use is this is like video game character footwork, right? Where the idle stance is like this repetitive small movement. I think that people tend to recognize that at a top level really quickly and capitalize on it. So if you're going to do some kind of like idle footwork outside of reach, it needs to be convincing. You need to change the space, not dramatically, but you need to change your angle enough that the other person like knows that you're serious about it. Because you're kind of like pace back and forth, it's just not, doesn't really throw much smoke on your intent. But it doesn't seem like there's a lot of fights here, so it's kind of hard to. Oh wait, there's the second one. I thought there was only one. We kind of had like I think that last interaction was Fuzz just kind of like got pretty close and tried to swing on him, and Morpheus is kind of blocked and counting him out, because I think Fuzz is not really like taking much control of the range here. So we got a little bit of circling here, which is better than round one. I think that was another kind of like contextless stab, where it's like you have to build a layer of misdirection first. I think Fuzz had some misdirection with his circling lateral footwork there, but he didn't really have any layers of misdirection with his swords. I think in Florentine, the trouble with stabbing can be that since it puts your sword so out of position that the other guy, you can't block two swords with one sword, except in like some small miracles, or like Big Head did on that stab that he backed up out of. But you have to have like your stab in Florentine has to be on a beat where you know that they're not gonna swing at you, right? So like the best time to stab someone, as an example, is if you know that your opponent is committed to stuttering or throwing a feint, like some kind of loop while they're stepping forward. You would stab them on that beat because you know that they're using that beat to try to misdirect you but not attack you yet, right? So that's when you would throw a stab. And it can be tough in Florentine. So my dog's snooping around. All right, let's keep going. I think now we get to the Normandy of the tournament and the long siege. Stuttering. This is always such a pleasure because when two people have been fighting each other forever, there's like so many layers to it. And you can see the amount of like stuttering and feinting on the outside is massive here. Let's see if we got. What's our attack? Okay. So it looked like a kind of a left-right. Okay, so we had like a left side chop, right side slot. I'm gonna go back. Here. Okay, I'm gonna see. We're watching Big Head right now. So left sword's kind of in front, so that's usually like the parrying and misdirecting sword out of Florentine. And the right hand is back, so that means it's usually the attacking sword. That's not what Big Head does here, and that's fine. That's a layer of misdirection. That's not like a not correct kind of thing. I think. Okay, I think what we're going to end up with is Big Head has created context at least twice with his right sword. He's going to try to attack first with his left. So we had a left move, left hand swing, left hand's going down. Okay, so I think that's what I would have changed about this approach. I went back too far. I think it looks like you create a lot of great threats with your right hand by circling it and sweeping it up, right? So it opens up the attack for your left hand, but then you start kind of creating that, doing the same thing with your left hand, and then kind of attacking with that right afterwards, right? So I think that there's, in a way of thinking about it, you kind of lose the advantage of the confusion that you created with the right sword by kind of switching the attention back to the left sword and then leading with that. I'm planning to. Yeah, I think 11 p.m. is my end time for this. I think that may be one reason that it seems like Morpheus kind of read through your assault here. And I think the only other piece I noticed for improvement is you have to be careful of where your foot position ended up on this lunge. Like, this is a big reach, but this also could have been a step where this foot stayed on the ground and you were a little bit forward. I think that this kind of like maximizes your reach, and that's fine, but you don't like really expressly need a reach advantage against someone who's about the same height as you. You guys seem like the same height to me. It may be that like, if you told me that Morpheus had like longer arms than you, I might believe that, I think, or it might just be like a build thing. But you want to make sure that this foot kind of stays to the ground so that you're able to move and pivot off of it. Because this is committal, so if you didn't get him on either of these, you probably would have gotten locked down and hit for it. Or if he had used lateral movement to the side while you had approached like this, if your foot has these this cooldown time while it's in the air, that could be a situation where like someone with stronger lateral movement may have been able to take advantage of that. So in certain situations, a forward lean like this is fine, but I think in general, I try to avoid that if possible. I have noticed, since my ankles and knees are not working as well as they used to, that I am ending up in this position sometimes, which is like more catastrophic for me as a 5'6" short king, perhaps the shortest of kings. But it's one of those things I'm like currently trying to say, like, hey, Mikey, you gotta keep your feet on the ground and move forward. So that's something that I would think about. I think that's the only thing that I'm seeing here. I think Morpheus just needed more movement in general, because if he is aware of the fact that you might like pick your feet up, like again, that lateral movement would have helped him capitalize on that situation. Because if he moved out around to the, let's see if we can go back and I can draw the line again. But he moved out around while you were up in that position. Then he's got the opportunity to get two swords on your one sword. I think it's coming up here. Okay, so if he stepped out to this position right here and tried to engage you from here, and this is not that far, this is maybe like 2 feet, and then he's got both of these swords, can try to interact with this sword, and this sword up here would have to come the whole way around to his new position to be able to hit you. So that's an example of like how you can capitalize on that situation. So I was trying real hard to get his left hand low off of the first attack to thump him with my right, but he's got these big ass python-y biceps, so I hit arm instead of chest and time. The better use of context would have helped me there. Yeah, I got, as a person who weightlifts, there are so many shots that hit my bicep that would have hit my chest. It is so fucking amusing and kind of sad. It makes me feel a little bad. There have been times where like if I block like this, like my bicep comes up like over my chest and blocks for it, and I'm like, man, no wonder CK thinks I'm like a cheater. It feels real dirty. All right. Great counter. Oh, did he not? I don't know if there's a clarification there. It looked like he took it, but someone said not to take it or something. Or maybe he's just switching swords. I think it looked like he took his right hand, but then like switched it back. But I think he just wanted the other sword in his right hand. Hi. Can you see his tail swishing? Oh, hi, buddy. It's a nice puppy. Do you want to come up? Is that what you want? I have to stream, buddy. Can you lay down, please? Go lay down. Good boy. So he gets hit. He just likes the black sword. Keep getting it sideways, down arm, and it breaks me. Gotcha. Okay. I think that would have been a good situation for more lateral from you as well. Because, like, if you have two swords, you have the power, right? So just creating, like, small periods of time for yourself where his body's not perfectly oriented towards you can be really powerful and get you that, like, opportunity to control his sword with one sword while you hit him with the other. That's half of what I'm here for. I think I need to pick up like a second camera and a stream deck so I can hit a button because it just put him on camera because he's always his bed is like right down here. I think he's trying to tell me it's getting time for him to go outside, but he's gonna have to wait for a little bit. All right, next one. So. Yeah, you gotta like. I feel like the advantage for Florentine when you get someone down an arm is not as pronounced as it is his sword and board. Like if I take your arm and sword and board, man, or you take mine, like I am probably fucked. Like it's just way too fucking hard to get around that shield. But with Florentine on single sword, they have a very good chance to just reset on you due to how the rules work. Like personally, I think that having a half second for shot in motion is way too fucking long. And most people really just play like a quarter second. But it's super easy to get reset on. So I think that you're doing fine with having like a bit more of a still position on the outside because you have the length and hand speed to control the situation without too much footwork. But I think against Morpheus, you need a little bit more because you don't have the advantage of that reach. And I think adding lateral movement when they're down a sword can take it from like a risky endeavor for you where you might get a reset to basically a foregone conclusion where you'll win because they have to adjust to not just your second sword that they don't have, but also your aggressive positioning. So you really got to like lay it on thick when you got them down in arm and Florentine. No problem. Lots of good stutters. Lots of good stutters. This reminds me of Saving Private Ryan when they had the two snipers like looking for each other in the field from like super long range. I like it. Hell of a standoff. Very exciting. It was a good, like, small backward shuffle there that took into account that the small ring that you made him just barely miss with that back step when it got the inside of your hand. That was really good. So, okay. That looked like just kind of an exchange when both guys kind of wanted to slot. So you just get a reset. I feel like Florentine is a really important area for cardio too, because you're just going to get a fuckload of resets because it's just too hard to control the other guy. Good stuttering. Low position. Okay, it looks like you got in there first. That was a good call. I want to see this exchange again. So I think you're kind of hand matching him. I liked that you're hand matching him as kind of a setup to cross with your right hand. I think your right hand cross over the top is really good because it like that right hand cross kind of creates that A-frame that could block off like two quadrants at once. I think that's really good. I think we could see a tiny bit more left-handed action in here with like jabs from far away, but you might be worried about like getting. I could see the argument for worrying about getting counter-striked by Morpheus, because it does seem like his feet is a tiny bit faster than you, in addition to the two of you being similar heights. You could probably convince me that he's slightly taller than you, but everyone is gigantic compared to me. That was a really good snipe. Maybe. All right, I really like how I felt like Morpheus was kind of pawing around at the ground on the outside and using lateral in the way that I'm kind of like picturing should happen in Florentine. And you were still for a moment, but you just did some very explosive change in range and positioning to show him kind of like, I am waiting for you to move in. I can move, right? It's just like a footing switch. I feel like switches in footing like that, why they are powerful is the way that we kind of picture our defense in Florentine. It's not like a continuous, we're tracking the lanes and cones and lines and all of that stuff. It's more like your brain takes a quick snapshot of what the defensive structure needs to look like. So when you switch those feet, especially if you switch those feet while they are doing something, a lot of the time it can kind of confuse the coordinate system that they thought that they had and cause them to like miss, because like maybe they're aiming for this back shoulder here and you move it forward and they were trying to wrap around so they go wide, or maybe they were aiming for the front shoulder and when you step forward you move it back so it like whiffs down past you. I think with footing switches, unless you are switching to match something they are doing, I would use it as I would probably use it as an attack or do something offensive with it to kind of take advantage of the threat of that situation, where you take that context and erase it and now suddenly press on them. I think like a good safe horizontal chop or something would have been a good candidate there. I think you were kind of just switching maybe to just to change your strategy up a little bit, like to get your right hand forward maybe for that cross again. Yeah, okay. That's what it was. Was that cross? Good shot. Good snap.
I believe so. There's that moment of optimism too, but
Yeah, great accuracy. You're hitting some very small targets that are moving from very far away.
I didn't eat mine.
I think more of this is like stepping up his lateral movement, kind of understanding that like standing still is not going to work here.
No.
Is that same time? I think that was same time.
It was neck and back, but I think like Eagle was happy neck and back. We're running it. I'm afraid of the camera.
But he can't keep that cross off himself. That is dangerous. That cross is really giving you some great control of the fight there. I think demonstrating it as a threat 2 or 3 times is good. I think at this point I might consider start faking with it, since he's died to it like 3 times now. So I think now is the time for like fake cross to a hip wrap or something, or even just fake cross to the same side hip. I think I get what you're doing, where you're using not hand matched footwork, but normal footwork to get unmatched footwork to be able to get this right hand closer to this side, because you're getting a lot of really great success with that. I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, I think people, Florentine people are sometimes very dogmatic about, oh, you should always hand match. And I really don't think that's true. It's perfectly fine to have like an offensive hand and a defensive hand, because it like just still confuses the parameters enough that like it doesn't need to be the offensive hand, and it doesn't need to be equal. And in some ways, like using this hand primarily, a lot of the time this can create more openings for the left hand to strike, because like the opponent starts to make the assumption like, okay, they're doing right hand offense, left hand defense. So having this stance forward like this, a lot of the times can pull openings from for the left hand to be able to capitalize on. So I'm wondering if you'll do that. So switching back to hand matching. Okay. So I get the point of hand matching, but I'd rather let the right hand do most of the work, which lets people forget about left hand. Yeah, for exactly the reason you just talked about. Slash out a few times. That makes sense. I think it's a valid strategy for sure.
There's like a nice ringing sensation on the way down.
Anyway, I wanted to go back and see Morpheus's charge here, since it was successful. I wanted to figure out why that was working. I think you also said you were highly specialized in single sword, so I think that makes sense to match to your strengths. Okay, so Morpheus has that. He's got a nice, safe, left-handed horizontal chop. It's right here. Back up. Right here. I like this shot for Florentine because you can see this hand is high, so it's going to help us block this sword if it tries to come down in close. So it's a very safe way of kind of like opening up. Successful first shot rings my ear like a bell. If you got hit in the ear, you gotta not swing back, man. That gave you gave up a free reset on that one. What you gotta do is if you get hit in the face, you check to see if you're hurt. First of all, safety first, and then whether it hurt or not, you act like it hurt. Like shake your head off. Be like, fuck, I'm definitely dying. I'm definitely dead. Get your cell phone. Be like, please, can you call my mom? You knocked my ear out of my head. Then take the reset. Or if they look preemptively concerned, the next layer of counterplay is while they're looking at you like, oh my god, did I hurt you? Hit him in the body. Get him in the body. Anyway, back to work. Is that to your ear? It's on one of those. I can't tell which shot was the ear. I think I would have just point out that the horizontal chop set up that drive really well. And I think what I liked about the drive was it wasn't completely straightforward. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys tracked that because the movement was subtle, but his drive went like from about here to here horizontally, and then it kind of turned in this way like that, so it went like out and then wide, whereas like this would have been like a straightforward approach here. Oops. No, that's not what I wanted. That's basically fine. So you had like a outside footwork and then inside footwork. So just before the hip wrap, he does great work closing there. Other than the accidental headshot, he obliterated me on that fight. I mean, like if you throw back after you get hit in the ear, you also can't. If you swing back, you kind of lose that right away, right? So I think it's really good in tournaments. Like if you get in the ear, hit in the face of the ear, make it your reaction to like stop. Because it's like a free reset, right? Because if you get hit in the head or the face, like obviously they closed on you in some form and you were probably open since you didn't block it, right? So I would try to take the reset if I got hit in the head. I wouldn't pretend that it hurt more than it did. I would just be like, you hit me in the head, let's reset. Although I do get the temptation. I think that that's what I would do optimally. I think my heart is like, who cares? Just fight. So I understand why you did that. Especially at Keep, when it's exciting, it's like with your boy in the finals. Makes sense. Especially like a sparring partner in the finals at Keep. That's got to be really exciting. All right. Good blade beats for control by both of you guys. I like Morpheus's pump stab fakes too. I'm not convinced that would work for someone who is my height because I'm not sure. I feel like I would have to power it with my footwork. Okay. Right in the body. That's great fights though. Is this for the reset? So I freeze appropriately here. It's interesting to me because I'm more of a ditch fighter than a tournament fighter. I had to do a lot of work to get the reaction to stop when I get hit in the head. Headshots just don't mean the same thing in ditches because nobody cares if you get hit. That's fair. That's round one. He just knocked me to losers. Gotcha. It's always confusing when people clap, but it's not over. I feel like I would like hold my breath. I'm like, oh god. All right. Oh, that was a good shot. What was that? That's like, yeah, he's pumping the horizontal chop. That's the second horizontal pump. That was really fucking cool. That was, he got like pumped, and then he pumped and then dropped down like that. It dropped his hand down, hoping that you would come across. I think it looked like, since he brought his hand down, your sword kind of missed. That was fucking sick. That was really cool. I love that. Stolen. I've never talked to Morpheus in my life, but I invented that shot and taught it to him. That's the time travel thing. It's classified. That is fucking sick. All right, let's go back.
No, so you swung both at the same angle, and I angled here and got whacked in the sword twice. Okay. I don't. That sounds about right. Like, the camera's gonna look great later. Okay. I wouldn't cheat that. I'm just asking about the angle. I didn't think you would. I trust you. You're about to bash the sword out of my hands. I don't want to die here. But I survived that.
Okay, got the hero block. That's sick.
Yeah. I assumed you were good. Well, yeah, I mean, why would you not? Ready, play off.
This clip is wild, and Hades has phenomenal slow motion footage of it, but I catch the block on accident. Oh, that's always funny. That's always funny where they're like, I'm gonna die for sure, and then you don't, and then you're like confused and have to explain it. Okay. I do like Hades' steady cam, that's pretty cool.
Mine is still a little blown and my wrist is still a little fucked up. I'm like, damn. So you pinned it to my shoulder with the first one, and then that had the leverage to block the second one.
I can almost understand you.
You know, I wasn't about to start swinging, but like, what the hell was that?
Nobody.
I'll take your word for it. It looked like a lot of arm. No. Okay. Yeah, I don't. What about
I think that was Big Head killed Morpheus on that one, and Morpheus got the arm. The audio isn't that bad on this. I wish the capture actually processed. Do you want to come up here? Come here, you nosy guy. Come on. Up here. Let's go. Let's go. It's creeping on me, my manager. Good circling, good footing switch. Okay. I think I'll get an exchange of bodies there, maybe. I think what I'm seeing here for the most part is that Morpheus is he's making some attempts to move laterally, but then kind of stopping on him, right? So let's go back. I think it's like a good idea, a good start, but he's not committing to it very much. Okay, could be tiredness. Let's see what's in the chat. So I think my favorite part of this entire matchup is that he and I win a collective total of 6 times. I think that 5 of them involve the other person being surprised to have won. I appreciate being able to relax, just fight out with a friend and get clean fun. Yeah, especially at like the tournament. That's super cool. So thanks for rating, Natalie. I appreciate it. It's always good to see you guys. I heard they started dropping a Dragon Ball Z Minecraft expansion, so I may yet get into that. So let's see this. Let's go back to... I was talking about Morpheus' lateral footwork here, where he looks like he's giving it a good shot. See, so we had like a lateral shift there, and then we'll have another lateral shift in a moment. So there's another one. I think that was more to like reset, but like I think like the lateral movement is kind of like no good without some kind of attempt to. There's like 2 ways to use it, right? So one way to use lateral movement is to just kind of continually use it to just create some confusion for your opponent and make sure that they never get too comfortable. They never get, they're never able to settle it in. Like that's kind of how I see Unknown using a lot of his lateral movement on the outside. That's a component of what he does. He also uses it in the second way, which is you want to use that lateral movement to augment your shots with like a different trajectory, or augment your approach with some extra defense by distancing yourself away from the sword that you think that they're most likely to attack you with. But like just kind of taking a lateral position and then not doing much else unless you're trying to get ring control doesn't really accomplish much here, right? So I think that particular spot right there would have been better pressure if Morpheus had moved laterally and threw those safe shots immediately and see if he could get a reaction out of it, and he may have been able to repeat it later. And I think this lateral movement was kind of just like a reset to a certain position in the ring or something. There's a big flurry, and it looks like... Yeah, it looks like you got him on shot 1 where he misunderstood where your range was. So that was solid. All right, we're done with Florentine. Man, that was a fucking marathon.